welcome back to Queen's Roots. I am your spiritual and metaphysical teacher, Queen Mother, and I am so excited for you guys to join me here in my sacred little space. Here on this channel, I guide you along your spiritual journey to help you reconnect with who you really are and to understand how your life's purpose as a spiritualist and how to use the metaphysical tools to co-create the life that you desire to live. Now, in today's topic, I want to talk about so in today's topic, we are jumping into and explaining to you what is the difference between an ancestor altar and an intentional. Now, you heard me talk about an ancestor altar and an intentional altar in my previous video, and I explained to you the 8 or 9 things that you should not be doing with when it comes to your ancestor altar. And today I'm going to tell you specifically what it is. Alright, so an ancestor altar is a place where we acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge our relatives that were before us. And ancestors could be relatives from blood, relatives from marriage, relatives from, like, say you were adopted. You have those, you have friend relatives, you have whatever you consider your relatives, though your ancestors are, that's who they are. An intentional altar is an altar where most of my workers, if you practice voodoo, if you practice hoodoo, if you are a Wiccan, whatever you spell work you decide to practice, or if you just want to set up a meditative space, that is what your intention altar is. It's a place where you acknowledge any deities such as the Orishas. You may acknowledge any of the Loa. You may acknowledge any of your deities like the moon or the sun or Aphrodite. I'm trying to think of some of these the Wiccan gods, but I can't think of it right now. But anyone that's that's not blood, you're going to honor them on your intentional altar. So that's what that is for. So when you're having with your altars, you know not to mix your altars up. It is important that your ancestors have a very sacred and safe space that they can come to be acknowledged and honor and communicate with you. And it's important that when you're doing your spell work, that it is separate in a different space, so that way your ancestors are not confused as if like you're only coming to me when you need money. Or if you're doing spell work for other people, it is very, very important that your altar is completely away from your ancestors, because you don't want to tie someone else's energy or someone else's ill intentions or whatever work that you're doing with your ancestors. That is supposed to be kept your strongest and purest form of place of worship with them. Now, if you are calling on your ancestors for any spell work, then you can just call them to wherever you are and invite them into the space in which you're doing your spell work in. Now, when you an important housekeeping thing is whenever you're doing any spell work, make sure you are with your intentional altar, that you keep your altar clean. If you make any waxes that spill, if you have any your cloth gets dirty from too much like incense or charcoal or whatever you decide to use, make sure you clean up your mess right then and there. They stain, especially wax. I've had like this cloth here for years, and I've allowed like the wax will melt on it, and I didn't know until like the next day, and by this time it's already hardened, and it is such a pain depending on the cloth on how to get off. So keep your items on your altars clean at all times. Make sure you're keeping the energy around them. If you have to smudge your altar once a week, cleanse your altar, clean your items on your altar, okay? Now I told you guys that I personally can't wait to get a bigger space where I can set up an altar for my Orishas for themselves. So if you have a specific deity that you want to honor, I will also consider getting them a different altar. Unless you incorporate that deity into your altar, you know, I would consider separating them from your regular altar and definitely from your ancestor altar. But if you like, I just want I used to have Oshun in my bedroom, and I want to have Yakimaya in my living room, and I want to have Ishualekwa in my door opening or entryway of my home. But until that, I don't have the space to really accommodate all of those altars. I just kind of found a way to just kind of acknowledge them in my own unique way. So whenever you choose to do, keep your Orishas a little bit separate, unless you work specifically with that Orisha or that deity or that Loa specifically. then you know you'll keep them on their altar. Like as you can see, Oshun is on my altar here, but that's because I typically work with her energy a lot more, whereas I'm learning to work with Yamayas now. But we'll get there later. So what you want to do is, for your intentional altar, you'll want to save your tarot cards, your books, your tarot cards, and your crystals for your intentional altar. Those are going to be really, really good unless you are doing a ritual that requires your ancestors and you want to charge your cards, or you want to charge your crystals with the ancestral energy. But keep them on your intentional altar. So if you're having to charge your crystals, or if you need to like cleanse your crystals or charge your cards, you want to put those on your intentional altar and not your ancestral altar. So just remember that cute little tip. And also save, my last tip I'm going to have for your altars, on the working with the different altars, keep your hexing on your intentional altar. Your ancestors are not in the place to be hexing, and you should not require of them to hex or use negative energy. They're healing, you're working on healing. You know, your ancestors can definitely help you with those things, but I personally don't want my ancestors to kind of work with any negative energy unless they're stopping it from me. But I'm not going to call upon my ancestors to help me with any negative energy unless it's protecting me while I'm doing work for a client. So keep that in mind. But I don't put any of that stuff near my ancestral altar. My ancestral altar is like my sanctuary. You know, it's my place for me and my ancestors to kind of be one together, connect. So that's kind of all the little tips that I have for you with keeping your ancestor altar and your intentional altar separate. Just be mindful that if you can't do it, you can find a quite unique way, as I have done, to separate your altars. And I think I will find a way to incorporate another altar into my home soon, but as of right now, just keep that in mind. It's really important to keep them separate, because you don't want to mix up the energies with your altars, and you don't want to confuse your ancestors, and you don't want to confuse yourself. So separate those altars to make sure you get the maximum effect for your altar. Separate spaces. Right now, I will also want to say, you don't include any of your ancestor pictures on your intentional altar unless you are doing work specifically with that ancestor, but you can still do that on your ancestral altar. So do not put an ancestor on your intentional altar. Like if you're trying to do a curse, or if you're like unbreaking a family hex or something, then you may consider just writing the family name down. But you can still work that energy. If it's like your family, you can work it on your ancestral altar. You don't have to necessarily put them on your intentional altar. Okay, so if that was all, if you guys have any questions, or you want to know more about the difference between the intentional altar, or you have anything you want to add, please comment down below. I would love to see your comments about whatever about what you think the difference is between the altars, or if you even think that they shouldn't be separated. Please let me know. All right, so in love and light, I love you guys. You have a blessed and prosperous week. Trust, remember, I believe in you, and I trust that everything is working out in your favor. Okay,